Hey folks, if you're anything like me, the news that Disney Plus's upcoming Daredevil Born Again underwent severe rewrites and major casting changes was like music to your ears. Finally, you cry, they understand what we want. Somebody at Disney has recognized that when people said they liked Netflix's Daredevil, they didn't just mean, I liked the characters Daredevil and Kingpin and nothing else about this show. I only wish somebody had told them that sooner. To be quite honest, I'm not too worried about our title character. Disney has, so far as I can tell, handled him just fine. Like it or hate it, She-Hulk's portrayal of Matt Murdock was pretty much exactly how you'd expect the character to act when he isn't horribly depressed.
It's a low blow insulting a blind man's clothes.
We didn't get a whole lot of that in the original show, but the pieces were definitely there, and he felt like a pretty good translation into the new format.
We're gonna be the best damn avocados this city's ever seen.
Damn avocado.
I, however, am rightfully much more worried about Wilson Fisk, because at least to my mind, he's a far more difficult character to get right. Hawkeye was fine in its handling of the big guy, by which I mean it was kind of underwhelming, but I can mostly believe that this is the same character. Echo handled him quite a bit better, something that I've already covered a bit before and am probably going to talk about more in the future, but suffice it to say, I can see them going either way, portraying him fantastically or terribly. This video is going to be an attempt to give a rough outline of how I think Wilson Fisk should be handled in the upcoming series, what basic ideas he should represent, what goals he should have, and how he should play off of Matt Murdock during what will be now their third major conflict. To open our discussion, we should probably address the elephant in the room. The title. The Daredevil reboot has been branded under the title Daredevil Born Again, and that's really interesting. Born Again is one of Frank Miller's most famous runs with the character, and is treated by many as the gold standard for Daredevil stories. The plot follows Matt Murdock after the Kingpin has learnt his secret identity. Rather than killing Matt outright or attempting to corrupt him with threats or money, Kingpin decides to slowly dismantle Matt's entire life before him, getting him disbarred, discredited, bombing his apartment, that sort of thing. Taking Daredevil to the lowest place he's perhaps ever been and giving readers a satisfying path for his return to form. Sounds great, right? Like the kind of thing you might want to adapt to the big screen. It seems the Daredevil writers agree with you, which is why they already kind of did that. Netflix's third season of the show drew heavily from Born Again and another story, Guardian Devil. If you've read these stories, a lot of the comparisons are pretty obvious. In Born Again, Fisk tries to assassinate Daredevil with a taxi, only to be enraged upon finding out that Matt has escaped somehow. This is, of course, incorporated into the fantastic prison escape sequence in Season 3. Fisk using a fake Daredevil to discredit him in the press, Matt learning the identity of his birth mother, Matt's entire life being pulled apart, Captain America investigating a super soldier who takes red, white, and blue pills to alter his powers, are all Born Again plot lines that were adapted into Season 3. Well, maybe not the last one, but the rest for sure. The similarities between these stories initially worried me because it suggested that Disney was simply going to be retreading the exact same ground. Of course, it's possible that Born Again is just a meta joke the same way that Community Season 5's first episode was called Repilot, but I'm choosing to take this title somewhat seriously, which raises the question, can Disney's Daredevil adapt Born Again and not feel like a gigantic retread of work already done? To that, I say, absolutely yes they can. See, Miller's Born Again isn't really the kind of story that you need to see a one-to-one adaptation of. It has a lot of great stuff, but the bones of the run can be used to fit a variety of stories. All you really need to start with is Wilson Fisk knows Daredevil's identity, and he wants to destroy his life. The specifics are important, but they're plastic. Maybe firebombing Matt's apartment is a bit too garish for the tone of this series. There are other ways to take away Matt's livelihood, ways that might play better into some of the subplots of this particular iteration. Daredevil Season 3 saw Matt destroying his own life more than Fisk was. Fisk had a hand in it all, but it's safe to say that the through line of Season 3 was not Fisk wants to ruin Daredevil's life. Because of that, I think that there is still room to explore that storyline and everything that it entails. So that's our background. How do we make it work mechanically? As a reminder, the end of Daredevil Season 3 saw Wilson Fisk behind bars, discredited, and completely alone. He knows Daredevil's secret identity, but on threat of losing Vanessa, is unable to use or reveal it in any way. A continuation of this story must take this ending seriously. Season 3 is one of the most satisfying conclusions to a battle of wills I have ever seen, and the new season absolutely needs to justify why this ending wasn't final. That's not a bad thing by any stretch, to be clear. I would love for Born Again to Empire Strikes Back Season 3's ending in a way that makes sense, that makes Fisk seem somehow even more dangerous than before, but it has to be earned. To start, how is Fisk out of prison? This is probably the part that worries me the most, even though it's not even close to the most important issue, really, because Marvel has been using him as an antagonist in a few projects post-Season 3 that have kind of just, glossed over the issue. I'm mostly glad that they have, because I'd definitely like that to be saved for the main event, but it does raise the question of, how is this guy just free to roam the countryside when even Season 3 Kingpin couldn't do that? A very talented writer may be able to recontextualize the show's original ending, to show us that some mistake that Matt or the criminal justice system made significantly hampers the case against Fisk. Really tie in the question of whether vigilantism was the solution to Hell's Kitchen's problems or not. But personally, I think this is by far the hardest route to take. More likely, we might see a time skip, during which Fisk's people have been falsifying evidence or building a case, that sort of thing. Based on the ending of Echo, it seems like Wilson is probably planning a run for mayor, which could tie in quite nicely to his release. Weaponizing misinformation and manipulating unwitting innocents into supporting Fisk's empire is one of the few things that wasn't super heavily focused on in the original show. Instead, it placed a lot more focus on corruption and dark money, so this axis might be a fresh angle to approach from. Maybe in this decade, Wilson's team has been pared down significantly. Now he's largely on his own with a small team of professionals. He doesn't have the resources required to take over the city monetarily, so now he has to get creative, more directly manipulative. Another option might be that for legal purposes, Fisk still is in jail. He might well simply just be moving paperwork around, making it seem like he's safely locked away while he actually roams free. There's definitely room there to explore some kind of systemic failure, the sort of thing that Fisk is known for exploiting, but I don't know. It's an idea. I also think that it is obvious this show needs to contend with Echo's ending. For those who didn't watch, which seems like most people for some reason, Echo ended with Fisk being essentially forced to confront his childhood trauma in a way that he's been avoiding for the past several decades. It was a decent short little show with some good ideas and some fun relationships, though retroactively I do think I need to lower my rating from a 7 out of 10 to a 6. Just kind of think some of the glue was missing there. It's still a good show, you should probably watch it. To handle this, I think that Born Again would do well to take a subtler approach. They will almost certainly show us some flashbacks and scenes of Wilson coping, but I think it would be best to reflect this change primarily in his actions. Let this Fisk be more calculating, less impulsive. Maybe he's even more passionate about improving the city to the point where he's actually conflicted about some of his actions. He's still a villain, but some of the cracks are starting to form. Maybe we even start to see him as a sort of anti-hero, even if we kind of feel ashamed for even thinking that. I don't know, hopefully that makes some semblance of sense. The final major point to address is what I have coined the Vanessa problem, because superhero fans are sexist and I figured that might play well with them. As I said, the whole basis of Fisk's silence at the end of Season 3 is predicated on his desire to protect Vanessa and allow her to remain in the US.
And you won't harm Karen Page or fucking Nelson or anyone else. Because if you do, I will go after your wife.
To this, I send an open letter to Disney. Please, for the love of fuck, don't fridge her. You went to the effort of getting a new actress. The absolute lamest thing you could possibly do would be to kill her off and then say, whoa, looks like Fisk's free to go nuts. Hell, Season 3 already made fun of that idea. Don't do it. Please. Don't. What I want is for Vanessa to be a villain in her own right. Let her do some of the legwork to protect herself from harm so that Wilson's revenge quest becomes possible. Discrediting Matt Murdock, one of the lawyers who helped put Fisk in prison, and running for mayor are two goals that work really well together. Let Vanessa be a part of that process. Matt's final mistake in season 3 can be his failure to realize that the woman Fisk fell in love with is capable of great harm even on her own. It's a mistake that makes sense in character, but still allows for some really interesting exploration. Matt's become so obsessed with the evil that Fisk represents that he struggles to see other evils in proximity. Let Matt's hardships in this season be forced upon him. He's over the brooding Matt Murdock must die so that Daredevil may live bullshit. He's basically happy. Let Wilson Fisk ruin this for him intentionally and with great care. That, at least to me, is how you keep this conflict fresh. Also, Fisk should probably, win in the end. Maybe he does or doesn't become mayor, but in some way his power should be restored. Matt's beat him twice already. Let him lose this time. Just a dramatic little cliffhanger. Thank you for sticking around to the end. Consider subscribing if you're new. I will see you next week. We'll be talking about the Invincible mobile game. It's not very good.